When you stop chasing an avoidant, the very foundation of control they've quietly been standing on begins to shake. Because for the longest time, their confidence wasn't rooted in their own emotional security. It was rooted in how predictable you were. They knew your patterns. They knew that if they pulled away, you would lean in. If they went quiet, you would reach out. If they got cold, you would ask what was wrong. If they pushed you to the edge, you would cry, break down, but eventually come back. So even when things felt tense or distant, they carried an internal guarantee that you were still there, still orbiting them, still emotionally invested enough to fight for the connection on your own. And that gave them a powerful illusion, the illusion that they could keep you without fully choosing you, that they could benefit from your love without fully matching it, that they could decide when closeness happened and when it didn't, while you would always be waiting at the door. When you stop chasing, that illusion is shattered in a way their ego is not ready for, because suddenly their usual moves don't get the same response. The silence that used to make you spiral now meets your own silence. The distance that used to make you plead now meets your stillness. The vague messages they used to send as bait now sometimes receive no reply. And in that quiet, the truth that was hidden under all your effort finally comes into focus for them. They realize that your presence was never guaranteed. It was maintained, day after day, by your willingness to keep showing up even when you were hurting. At first, they don't consciously frame it like that. All they feel is discomfort, an itch, a restlessness they can't quite name. They might tell themselves you're acting weird, being distant, changing. But underneath those labels is something much more raw. For the first time, they are not sure whether they still have you, and that uncertainty is terrifying for someone who has built their whole attachment strategy on staying one step removed so they never have to feel the pain of loss fully. They've always tried to outmaneuver that pain by leaving before they're left, withdrawing before they're rejected, staying half in so they never fall all the way. But your decision to stop chasing introduces a new problem they didn't plan for. They might not have left, but now they're the ones feeling you slip away. And there is no dramatic explosion to blame, no big fight to point at, just the quiet reality that when they stopped investing, so did you. This is where the real risk finally becomes real to them. Because before, they could flirt with loss without actually tasting it. They could push you to your breaking point and then soothe themselves with the knowledge that you always came back. So they never truly believed they could lose you. Not in a final, soul-level way, but when the "I miss you" texts don't come, when the emotional essays never show up, when they realize weeks have passed without you trying to decode their behavior, a sinking feeling creeps in. What if this time they broke something in you that doesn't heal in the same way? What if your love had limits they refused to believe in? What if the person they had mentally categorized as always there has quietly stepped into a life where they are no longer waiting? That's where their illusion of control crumbles, because they are no longer the one deciding how close or far the relationship is. Their favorite lever, your chasing, no longer works the way it used to. And now the distance they created isn't something they can simply snap their fingers and close. There is a gap, and for the first time it will only close if they move too, if they initiate, if they take responsibility, if they risk being the one who cares more, and that feels unbearably vulnerable to them. Yet the alternative is staring them in the face. The alternative is that they keep doing nothing and watch you disappear for real. You stopping the chase doesn't magically make them secure, but it does force them into a contact with reality they've avoided for a long time, the reality that people who are loved deeply can leave when they are not loved properly, the reality that hearts like yours don't stay on the shelf forever. The reality that connection is not a permanent resource they can dip into whenever life gets lonely. It is something that can be lost, and they are confronted with the darkest truth of all for someone who runs from intimacy, that the very distance they use to feel safe might be the same distance that now costs them the one person who ever made them feel truly seen. Your silence and non-pursuit reveal something that was invisible when you were still chasing. They expose that their space, their distance, their hot and cold behavior only ever functioned because you were the one constantly filling in the gaps with your emotional labor. As long as you were texting first, initiating hard conversations, soothing their anxiety, forgiving their disappearances, explaining your feelings in long paragraphs, their avoidance was buffered. It had no real consequence. They could say, "I just need time. I'm bad at communication. I'm overwhelmed. And those words landed softly because you would immediately step in to compensate. You'd adjust how you approach them, soften your tone, lower your needs, reassure them that you understood, and that performance made it seem like their distance was a legitimate strategy, like it worked because the relationship limped forward anyway. In reality, it wasn't working. You were working, overworking, doing all the repair, all the emotional cleanup, all the heavy lifting they should have been doing alongside you, and when you finally stop chasing, when the phone stays on the table instead of in your hand, when you don't ask, "Are you mad at me?" When their energy shifts, when you don't rush in to smooth over every uncomfortable moment, suddenly there is no one left to hide the truth. The truth that their space is just emotional absence, and that absence creates a void nothing fills unless they do. The first time that void stares them in the face is when they pull away, and for once nothing happens. There is no heartfelt voice note from you, no 3-paragraph text trying to understand them, no late night, "Can we please talk?" message, just silence. And in that silence, they are confronted with a reality they've been protected from this whole time, that relationships do not sustain themselves on distance and self-protection. They survive because at least one person is constantly leaning toward repair, toward understanding, toward contact. In your dynamic, that person was always you, and with you stepping back, the entire engine stalls. They feel it in the dead air between you, the lack of notifications, the empty chat screen, and for the first time, they're not being rescued from that emptiness by your effort. Your silence is not manipulation, it is a mirror. It shows them exactly what happens when you stop feeding a one-sided system. Where once there were long explanations, there are now short answers. Where once there were follow-up messages, there is a full stop. Where once there was emotional urgency, there is now neutrality. And every one of those missing pieces makes it painfully obvious that the old pattern only functioned because you were forever patching the holes their avoidance created. They might have told themselves they need space to breathe. But who was keeping the connection alive while they were off catching their breath? It was you, replying kindly even when hurt, offering reassurance even when you were the one who needed it, initiating contact even when your last message went ignored. None of that was mutual space. That was them stepping back and you stepping in double, just to keep the bridge from collapsing. When you stop, the bridge does collapse, not because you are being cruel, but because it was never structurally sound in the first place. It only stood because you were metaphorically out there with duct tape and your bare hands holding the beams together. Once you move your hands, the structure reveals itself for what it is: lopsided, unstable, dependent on your sacrifice. And they can no longer tell themselves that distance is harmless. They start to understand that their favorite coping strategy isn't neutral. It has an impact, not just on you, but on the entire relationship. Your silence exposes this by refusing to cover it anymore. And this is where the discomfort really spikes for them, because with no one rushing in to fix it, they are left with a choice they've long avoided: to either step forward and fill the gap with their own effort, with their own vulnerability, with their own words, or to do nothing and watch the connection fade. Before, they never had to consciously make that decision. They could float in the gray area while you refused to let things die. Now the gray area starts dissolving. Your silence draws a line where there used to be a blur. They can feel that if they don't move, nothing will move. If they don't repair, nothing will be repaired. If they don't initiate, nothing will start. And that is terrifying for someone who has spent years outsourcing the work of closeness to their partners while hiding behind stories of being complicated or emotionally unavailable. On your side, the same silence that exposes their lack of effort also exposes to you how much you were carrying. You begin to see clearly that the reason the relationship always felt like a fight was because you were fighting alone. Your non-pursuit shows you that when you stop pushing the boulder uphill, it simply rolls back down. And that's not a sign of your failure. That's a sign that the hill was never meant to be climbed by one person. Your stillness reveals the imbalance in a way that no amount of over-talking ever could. And while it hurts, it also sets you free. Because once you see that their space required your self-abandonment to function, You can never again pretend that chasing them is the same as loving them. Your silence teaches both of you the same lesson. Their avoidance only looked like it worked because you were always there, doing the work they refused to do. As you hold your boundary, something profound begins to happen inside you that no one on the outside can fully see. Your nervous system, which has been trained to live on high alert around this person, slowly starts to remember what safety feels like. For so long, your body was wired to react to their every move, their replies, their silences, their tone changes, their disappearances. Everything they did or didn't do created a wave inside you. You couldn't relax because you were always bracing, waiting for the next shift, the next cold phase, the next "I need space" moment. And whether you realized it or not, your entire system was orbiting around their emotional weather. If they were close, you exhaled. If they were distant, you panicked. If they were affectionate, you felt worthy. If they were detached, you doubted yourself. Your days were not just about you. They were about reading, decoding, and surviving them. When you hold your boundary and stop chasing, at first it feels anything but peaceful. It feels like withdrawal, like you've taken away the drug you were addicted to, checking your phone, replaying their words, imagining what they're thinking, and your body shakes with the urge to break the boundary, to send one more text, to reopen the door just to stop feeling the ache. But if you stay with it, if you keep choosing not to reach out, not to over-explain, not to fix what they keep breaking, something begins to soften beneath the anxiety. It's subtle at first, a slightly deeper breath, 1 hour where you didn't think of them, a night where you fell asleep without stalking their online status. And those moments are signs that your nervous system is slowly detaching from its obsession with their rhythms and reconnecting with yours. For so long, your body thought unpredictability said it was love. The fast heartbeats when they finally replied, the stomach drop when they disappeared, the constant scanning of your notifications, that roller coaster became your normal. It was exhausting, but it was familiar. And familiar often feels like safety, even when it's hurting you. So when you stop chasing, your system freaks out because you're changing the pattern it has lived in for months or years. But the more you hold the line, no double texting, no begging, no performing, no over-functioning, the more your body begins to realize that the danger has shifted. The danger is no longer in losing them. The danger is in losing yourself again. And with that realization, your boundary stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like protection. Your sense of peace doesn't explode back all at once. It returns in small, almost mundane ways. You notice you can finally listen to music without every lyric stabbing you with thoughts of them. You can go a few hours without checking your phone. You can sit in a room and be more present in your own life. Instead of mentally living in a hypothetical conversation with them, you start to care about things you neglected while you were emotionally babysitting the relationship. Your hobbies, your friendships, your sleep, your body, your dreams, and every time you choose to put your energy into those things instead of chasing their attention, your nervous system is receiving a new message. We matter too. Our life is more than waiting for them to choose us. There is a point in the healing where you suddenly realize how quiet it is inside you, not because you don't feel anything, but because the constant buzzing of anxiety is no longer swallowing every other sensation. Your mind still thinks of them, but it doesn't feel like drowning every time. You can see their name without shaking. You can remember a memory without collapsing, and that's not because they've changed. It's because you have created enough emotional distance for your body to stabilize. The cycles of their withdrawal don't yank you around like they used to because you're not holding the other end of that rope anymore. You've put it down, and with both hands free, you can finally hold yourself. As your life stops revolving around whether they are in a close mode or a distant mode, you start to notice how many decisions you used to make around them. You'd delay plans just in case they texted. You'd stay up late because they said they might call. You'd cancel things that fed your soul because you didn't want to miss a crumb of their attention. And now, as you honor your boundary, you begin making choices that serve you first. You go to bed when you're tired. You say yes to plans that make you feel alive. You turn off your phone if the conversation is draining, and that shift in behavior feeds back into your nervous system. The more you show your body that you will not abandon it for someone else's inconsistency, the more your body trusts you, the more it calms down. You might still have waves of grief, anger, longing, and confusion. That's normal. Healing doesn't mean you stop caring overnight. It means that even when those waves hit, you don't run to them to stop the pain. You ride the wave yourself, you breathe through it, you talk to a friend, you journal, you cry, you regulate. With you as your anchor, not them. And each time you do that, your nervous system learns we can survive big feelings without chasing the source of our hurt for relief. That is huge. That's the core of emotional freedom. There will come a moment, and it might be quiet, where you catch yourself laughing, genuinely, and realize you hadn't thought about them all day, or where they pop into your mind, and instead of panic, you feel neutrality, maybe even compassion, and you understand in your bones that your life is not a satellite around their planet anymore. You are your own center again. Your heart may still carry the story, but your nervous system is no longer hostage to their attention or withdrawal, and that is what holding your boundary has been doing all along. Quietly, underneath the shakes and the cravings and the doubt, it has been teaching your entire being that peace is possible without them, that safety can exist inside you, and that your life is allowed to be built around more than surviving someone else's fear of loving you properly. When you stop chasing an avoidant, whatever they do next, whether it's suddenly blowing up your phone, getting intensely loving, acting angry and offended, or going even colder and quieter, is evidence that your absence hit them. But you have to understand that this reaction alone is about impact, not transformation. And if you confuse those two things, you risk walking right back into the same cycle that almost broke you. When someone is used to you always being there, always reaching out, always fixing, your silence feels like a shock to their system. It unsettles their sense of control, it pokes at their ego, it stirs their fear of loss. So, of course, they feel something. Even avoidants feel something. They may feel panic. Did I push too far? They may feel jealousy. Are they talking to someone else? They may feel anger. How dare they stop trying? Or they may feel a hollow kind of grief they don't know how to name. And all of that can be very real in the moment. But a real feeling is not the same thing as real change. It is just an emotional spike, and emotional spikes are what your relationship has probably been full of already. If they suddenly pursue you, sending long messages, apologizing, admitting they miss you, promising they don't want to lose you, that is impact. Your boundary impacted them, your absence disrupted their comfort. Your silence forced them to confront a reality they didn't want to see, that they actually can lose you. And because that realization is painful, they try to pull you back into orbit. Not always because they're ready to show up differently, but because they want relief from the discomfort of feeling your distance. If they get angry, accusing you of giving up too fast, being cold, changing, that's impact too. Your stepping back has challenged their narrative. The one where you were always the emotional one and they were the calm, in control one. Now you are calm and they are stirred up, and instead of facing their part in that, they may lash out. But again, anger is not growth, it's resistance. It's their ego trying to protect itself from the truth that their behavior had consequences. If they go even deeper into avoidance, completely shut down, act like you never mattered, that is also impact. Your boundary scared them enough that their system went into full retreat, not because you were wrong to set it, but because any emotional activation, even the awareness of losing you, triggers their default run and numb response. You have to start reading their reaction as data, not destiny, as information, not a promise. It tells you that you mattered, that your energy was not disposable, that your absence created a real shift inside them, and that can be validating, especially when a part of you feared you were forgettable or replaceable. But this is where you must be careful, because your heart is starving for confirmation. It wants to translate any intense response as, they've finally changed, they finally get it, this time will be different. And that's how the cycle reopens. You step back. They feel the loss. They surge toward you. You take the surge as proof of evolution instead of proof of impact. And you throw the door wide open before there's any evidence of sustained, grounded, behavioral difference. Real change does not happen in 1 week of panicked texting or one emotional confession. Real change is boring, slow, unglamorous. It looks like someone taking ownership without being pushed. It looks like them initiating hard conversations instead of avoiding them. It looks like them staying in the room emotionally when they're uncomfortable instead of vanishing. It looks like consistency over months, not intensity over days. Their reaction is the spark, not the fire. It might be the moment they become aware of what they've been doing, the first time they truly feel the cost of their avoidance, the first time they see you as someone who can actually walk away, and that can be the beginning of growth. But only if they use that spark to start their own work. And that work will happen whether you are standing next to them or not. It's therapy, self-reflection, accountability, learning new tools, facing their childhood wounds, changing how they communicate, learning to regulate their fear instead of dumping it on their partner. And you will see that not in what they say when they're scared of losing you, but in how they move when they feel safe again. Many avoidants will act very secure for a short period when they feel you slipping away. More open, more attentive, more vulnerable. But the real test is what happens when the immediate threat of loss fades. When they feel okay again, do they stay present or do they slide back into distance once they've calmed their panic and reassured their ego that you still care? Your job is not to deny their reaction or to harden yourself so much that you pretend it means nothing. It does mean something. You had an impact. Your love was felt. Your leaving was felt. But your deeper responsibility is to protect your own nervous system by refusing to make their emotionals spike your cue to abandon all discernment. You're allowed to observe, to wait, to say, I hear your words, but I need to see what you do with them over time. You're allowed to hold the door only half open while you watch for patterns, not promises. Their reaction is about them, their ego, their fear, their grief, their awakening. It is not a guarantee that they are suddenly capable of meeting your needs, honoring your heart, or sustaining true intimacy that will only be proven in the slow, repeated, grounded choices they make, long after the shock of almost losing you has worn off. The deepest shift that happens when you stop chasing an avoidant is not about them at all. It's about the place your decisions come from inside you, because for so long everything you did was driven by an almost primal fear of losing them. That fear sat underneath every text you sent, every boundary you swallowed, every moment you stayed when your soul knew you should have walked. You weren't just trying to make the relationship work. You were trying not to be abandoned, so you kept asking yourself, what can I do so they don't leave? What can I say so they don't pull away? How can I be less, softer, calmer, easier, so they finally stay? And when fear is in the driver's seat, self-betrayal becomes normal. You apologize when you're the one hurting. You downplay your needs so you don't seem needy. You accept lukewarm effort and tell yourself to be grateful. You feel red flags in your gut and override them because the thought of losing them feels worse than the pain of ignoring yourself. But there comes a point, after enough cycles of being ignored, minimized, breadcrumbed, where a new fear slowly begins to rise in you, a fear that doesn't sound panicked but exhausted. It whispers, if I keep doing this, I am going to lose myself completely. And for the first time, that possibility scares you more than the idea of them walking away. You start to see the toll this dynamic has taken, how you've stopped recognizing yourself, how you've shrunk your personality, silenced your voice, abandoned your standards, how your body feels constantly tense, how your joy has been replaced by obsession. And that realization hits deeper than anything they've ever done. Because it's not about them anymore. It's about the relationship you have with your own soul. When the fear of losing yourself becomes bigger than the fear of losing them, the axis of your choices shifts. You no longer wake up and ask, how do I keep them close? Instead, you begin to ask, how do I keep myself safe? How do I honor my own heart? How do I protect my peace? And those questions lead to very different behaviors. You don't chase them after a cold phase. Not because you don't care, but because you care about the part of you that breaks a little more each time you ignore your intuition. You don't stay in endless, circular conversations begging to be understood, because you can feel how those talks drain your spirit. You stop excusing their avoidance as just how they are, because you finally admit to yourself that you are not okay living in permanent emotional half-light. Choosing self-respect over self-sacrifice doesn't mean you become hard or cruel. It means you start including yourself in the love you're so willing to give. It means you look at situations and ask, if I loved myself the way I loved them, would I allow this? And if the honest answer is no, you start behaving accordingly. You say no where you used to say, it's okay. You step back where you used to step in, you let things end where you used to resurrect them. And each of those choices is like placing a brick back into the foundation of your own identity. You're rebuilding trust with yourself after years of abandoning your own boundaries. At first, that feels terrifying because your old fear screams, if you do this, you'll lose them. But your new awareness quietly responds, if I don't do this, I'll lose me. And every time you side with that quieter voice, your nervous system learns that you are now the protector, not the perpetrator of your own pain. And that changes everything. You stop needing them to validate you because your self-respect begins doing that job. You stop begging them to choose you because your actions are proof that you are finally choosing yourself. You stop measuring your worth by how much you can endure and start measuring it by how unwilling you are to keep settling for less than mutual, healthy love. The avoidant might still be avoidant. They may or may not ever rise to meet you. But the power of this inner shift is that their choice no longer determines your value. Their distance no longer licenses you to abandon yourself. Their confusion no longer justifies your pain. You have switched from living in reaction to their fear to living in devotion to your own wholeness. And that is the moment you stop being the person who will do anything not to lose them and become the person who will no longer lose themselves for anyone.